Well, hello again from the Granite State. My name's Gary, and this is the Restoring Main Street podcast. Well, I hope this finds you all in good spirits. We got a little bit of warm weather here in the Granite State today, so it was up in the 60s. So um, feeling a little bit like spring is just around the corner. So that felt really good today. Looking forward to seeing the snow disappear and warmer temperatures get here. I'm a bit of a baseball fan, so the thought of Red Sox opening day sounds good to me. So kind of looking forward to that. Wanted to touch base with you tonight because this is the podcast itself is still, like I said, working out some mechanical kinks and stuff like that. And part of that problem, unfortunately, is due to my learning curve. So I'm still working with OBS, trying to figure out all the ins and outs with that, and working on several other things to kind of, like I said, give this a more polished look. But that's going to be a little bit of a journey. So I hope that you'll tune in more for the content and be a little receptive as far as me working out the kinks with the formalities of the actual podcast and the more polished look that I've talked about in the past. But something that I'm definitely working on. So, but in all seriousness, besides some of those drawbacks and things that I'm working on, I wanted to touch on something this evening that has been it's come to the forefront in the public eye. Many people are aware of this. Anytime you turn in the news, listen to friends, family, I'm sure this particular topic has come up several times. And in the interest of, like I said, expanding the scope of what Restoring Main Street actually means, and the topics we're going to cover, anything I feel like that impacts us, the individual. To me, it's the people that make up a main street, a town, a city. So anything that impacts us in an adverse way is something I'm going to discuss. I'm going to have guests on. We're going to talk about some of those different aspects and how they affect our daily lives. Along with still having the occasional local entrepreneur on to just talk about some of the impact and things that are happening to them as well. So without skirting around this too much more, let me get straight to the point. The thing that's been bothering me, the thing that is covered quite extensively in different ways, although you may hear it packaged differently depending on what media source or where you go to get your information, and it's basically cancel culture. When you stop and you think about the freedoms that this country affords you, the way the founding fathers set up this constitutional republic, we are guaranteed certain things within that Constitution, certain protections within the Bill of Rights. And one of those is freedom of speech. Today, it's very prevalent. It's become, unfortunately, over the last few months, a whole lot more acceptable, it seems like, to go ahead and pick and choose what you're allowed to hear and what you're allowed to see, the information you get, and honestly, the full perspective on any story that you may see on any media source that you choose to tune into. So those are the things right now that, to me, affect our culture. Our culture. Talking about cancel culture, affect our culture, affects Main Street, affects the people, and our livelihood, and just the freedoms we've always enjoyed. So big tech has a lot to do with that censoring, with that silencing of certain voices that aren't part of the groupthink that they consider somehow dangerous or subversive to the public. And honestly, that's something new for me. I mean, over the last few years, it's something that's been slowly creeping in. But I'm sure the rest of you, growing up, never thought of somebody's opinion, somebody's voice actually being silenced in any way. We all pick and choose what we decide to listen to, and that's what basically America and the way this country has always run. You don't have to tune into certain television programs. You don't have to tune into certain radio programs. There's a reason there's a variety of sources and information out there. You get to pick and choose what you listen to. But when there's a concentrated effort by those that right now control a lot of what we get to see and hear, and they're picking and choosing who you get to see, who you get to hear, and on those occasions when you do get information, that somehow it's cherry-picked as far as not getting the full scope or perspective on any given story. Those things are a detriment to our society. Those things are damaging to all of us. And to me, it definitely affects what I consider the restoring of Main Street, the lifeblood and the function of any community. So, in lieu of that, I had a couple of stories that I found online that I'd like to do my best to read through and give you some of the information behind this. Hopefully I don't stumble too much through it. Like I said, this is all a learning curve and process for me, and I'll get better as time goes on, and I just ask for your patience in that respect, and please try and just focus on what it is I'm trying to share with you. So, and just for the sake of trying a few different things out, we're going to try, and I'm running everything here, so there's nobody behind the scenes. We're going to try a different camera angle for this while I try and read through this information for you. All right. So the first story, actually I've chosen a couple different sources for this same story. The first one is from townhall.com, and this has to do with Tennessee principal. I'm not sure if you've heard this. Like I said, depending on what media sources you listen to, you may or may not have heard this. But Tennessee principal on leaving after warning kids about Twitter censorship. So basically, what I'm about to read you is a high school principal's address that he does daily to the student body of, let's see, this is a Tennessee high school in, Cordova High School in Memphis. And what he's addressing here is basically the big tech censorship that you saw happen after January 6th, after the riots on Capitol Hill. So, like I said, let me do my best to read through this. Tennessee high school principal is on administrative leave after he told students they should be alarmed by certain crackdowns on free speech on social media platforms like Facebook and Twitter. Barton Thorne, the principal of Cordova High School, told students during a morning announcement that they needed to be aware of the censorship happening on social media. Quote, "I'm not going to tell you what to think. I'm not going to tell you what to think. I just want to help you think," he told students on the video that was last posted on YouTube. He said, "This isn't about Trump," he said. "This is about speech." So Principal Thorne asked the young people to consider what happens when other groups filter and decide what you can hear and know about. quote, "There have been times even in American history when a small group of people decided what you can hear," he said. "Think about totalitarian governments. Think about North Korea. Think about China. What makes those types of systems possible is the restriction and elimination of the free exchange of ideas." Now think about this for a minute. This is a high school principal, like I said, in Tennessee, basically addressing the student body and suggesting to them that censorship and what you're allowed to hear is not a good thing. And he's speaking about the countries that we know of. The United States is basically supposed to be the antithesis of the silencing of voices and the exchange of free information. He goes on to say, "What happens when the marketplace of ideas becomes a forced monopoly? What happens when you do not have dissenting opinions, when you do not have the exchange of competing ideas?" He told the students. So basically this principle is defending free speech. And I guess in Shelby County schools in Tennessee, that's all of a sudden become a big no-no. So in response to that, well, let me see. Don't want to miss this. Okay. This is basically coming from the school system. It says the principal at Cordova High has been placed on paid administrative leave pending the outcome of a review of the comments that were made. And this is a spokesperson. Jerica Phillips told the local television station WREG down in Memphis. Not only that, the school district's Office of Equity and Access also weighed in on this. Emotionally charged situations, we have to sometimes temper back, recalibrate, think about the message we're sending to our students. This is the spokesperson, Michael Lowell, told the local television station. Because Cordova is like the city of Memphis, it's made up of a salad bowl of many different students of all areas of Memphis. We have to be aware and at heightened sense, have a heightened sense. We have to be culturally aware and also have our students have an outlet so they can express themselves and feel valued. This is something you're going to start to hear more of if you haven't already, and I would imagine if you're paying attention to, like I said, some type of news source, you've heard the terms of equity discussed as opposed to equality. Well, keep in mind when we talk about equity and when they're talking about equity, they're talking about outcomes, leveling the playing field for outcomes. They're not talking about equality, which is equal opportunity. They're talking about mandating and manipulating outcomes for everyone, which is something we've never done in the United States. We believe in equal opportunity, not distributing equity to everyone and forcing that upon anyone. Everybody has different abilities, different strengths. So you can't legislate equity. You can only offer equality and give everybody an opportunity. So basically the taxpayers, I think, of Memphis and the parents should be happy that they have an educator, that is place value on educating these kids and not trying to basically indoctrinate them. Well, And you're talking about critical thinking. Like I said, not teaching your kids what to think, but just how to think. And as it turns out, due to this, like I said, this was from the townhall.com. And I grabbed that basically because it had a few more quotes from Principal Barton Thorne. I also grabbed a copy of an article, a related article, over at Breitbart, which basically Principal Barton Thorne has turned around, understandably, and decided to sue the school district and superintendent for suspending him. Basically, Principal Thorne, it states here, okay. Like I said, he was talking about several media sources and how they turned around and decided to cancel speech of the president. Several different people just speaking out on what happened at the Capitol on January 6th. And he discussed, Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, any of those outlets, and even the shutting down of Parler. So Principal Thorne was instructed to use this by the superintendent as a teachable moment for the students. So that's what he was doing. And then, like I said, using this teachable moment basically based on free speech in our democratic society, in line with Tennessee standards for teaching social studies to high school students and in line with general accepted civics curriculum. So he was not stepping out of line in any way. Basically, these were principles I grew up with, and I want to believe that most of you grew up with as well. So in no way was this gentleman stepping out of line. He was basically sharing, like I said, values that I remember growing up with, and I still believe, I'd like to think we all still believe, are important things for our society, and principles that were established that we want to continue to share. So basically, like I said, Principal Thorne is suing the school district and the superintendent. He was facing he was accused of professional misconduct. He was subject to professional misconduct complaints, an internal discipline investigation, and like I said, was placed on administrative leave, and he had basically languished there for 6 weeks. So after that amount of time, it's understandable that this gentleman would take it upon himself to force the issue. And in the letter, Thorne's lawyers argue that the principal merely followed Superintendent Joris Ray's instructions to use the Capitol riot as a teachable moment. So I bring these things up, I guess, in the best way that I can. Like I said, I'll get better at this, but to me, it's the content, it's the subject that's the most important thing right now, and I hope you can get past my inabilities and the things that I need to work on to get better at doing this. But the content here, the subject matter here is so important. Like I said, I hope you can look past me and just hear what it is that I'm trying to say to you. Since when do we not want to teach our kids to use their own minds, to think logically, to basically understand that free speech is something worth fighting for? It's secured in our Bill of Rights. It's secured in the First Amendment. I'd like to think when you put something first, there's a lot of emphasis on that for a very good reason. So we're basically talking about cancel culture. This gentleman was put, like I said, on administrative leave and has now had to take the matter to court, which to me is a travesty and absolutely ridiculous when you're talking about these United States. So, and I have a second story. This one's a little more local, and local in that, like I said, I'm broadcasting from the Granite State, so this is south of me in Massachusetts, and the article I basically pulled from the Federalist. And headline reads, a high school football coach fired after raising concerns about critical race theory in his daughter's middle school curriculum. And I'm going to try to read down through this. This is pretty short. And this was posted on March 9th. High school football coach who led Massachusetts school district team for nearly a decade was fired in early 2021 after he raised concerns about the use of critical race theory in his 7th grade daughter's curriculum. David Flynn, with the help of Judicial Watch, filed a federal lawsuit in February seeking damages from Dedham Public School administrators, including the superintendent, high school principal, and high school athletic director for violating his First Amendment rights to speak out. The lawsuit explains that Flynn was released from his position just a few months after taking his 7th grade daughter's talking to his 7th grade daughter's history teacher, principal, superintendent Michael J. Welch, and 3 more people on the Dedham School Committee about the quiet change to the middle school's World Geography and Ancient History 1 curriculum without notifying or review by parents. These charges, Flynn complained, included, these changes, Flynn complained, including coursework on politics, race, gender equality, and diversity that were not suited for a 12 to 13-year-old, subjected coverage of topics in literature and other class materials labeled all police officers as a risk to all black people and all black males a risk to white people, and the teacher's blatant support for Black Lives Matter. The lawsuit describes one of the daughter's assignments. Plaintiff's daughter was asked to consider various risk factors and mitigating factors that 2 people, one identified as white and the other identified as black, supportedly might use to assess each other on a city street. Included among the various factors were skin color, gender, age, physical appearance, and attire. Black, aggressive body language, and wrong neighborhood were among the risk factors assessed by these persons by using identity as being white. White police officer were among the risk factors used to assess as far as identifying a black person and how that they should look at a given situation. The school's lack of attention on these concerns, however, forced Flynn and his wife to remove their 2 children from the DPS system. In an October 2020 email, Flynn wrote that superintendent failed to ensure teachers were presenting course information objectively and without bias. Quote here, I believe all relationships are based on compromise. The superintendent was not willing to compromise. I explained to him that if the teacher teaches the course objectively and removes BLM logo from the class, people will soon get over the fact that the class was purposely created without notifying parents and without having a visual course curriculum, syllabus, and learning objective. And this is what Flynn wrote. Apparently, it does not mean much to him that the Dedham public school system is losing 2 wonderful students. So basically, you have like I said, a gentleman that was part of the Dedham school system, a 10-year veteran, and decided to speak up about the teaching of critical race theory in his daughter's 7th grade class. What's happening? What's happening in our society today? What is it when you're a taxpayer and you cannot address a teacher, when you cannot address a school board, or even talk to a superintendent about the curriculum that your child is being subject to and your objections to it? These are legitimate objections. These are not subjects that are something that needs to be discussed with a 12-year-old. Critical race theory, basically teaching students, usually white students, that the color of their skin is something to be ashamed of, that they are automatically guilty of something because they have white skin, and they are automatically racist, regardless of their actions or how they treat their classmates or anyone else for that matter. It's an assumption made based on skin color. And right now, it's basically a brainwashing that's being attempted on our kids in a public setting, in a public school, in a place that we thought was safe to send our kids. And this gentleman, like Principal Thorne, is being canceled because he decided to speak up, he decided to speak out. I don't know where we're going anymore. I really don't. I do my best to not get too emotional about these things. It's tearing apart the fabric of our society, and I have a hard time understanding. Well, I can't say I have a hard time understanding, because I understand what they're trying to do. What I don't understand is why I don't see more people than these 2 gentlemen standing up around the country and saying, no, this is enough. This needs to stop. The only way it does stop is that each of us in our own communities develop or put to use the backbone that we might talk about or chat about online or discuss with friends, message individuals on some type of social media platform, the things that we talk about in private that upset us, that bother us. But we, like Principal Thorne, like Mr. Flynn, are worried about getting canceled ourselves. The only way this stops is that more of us get involved, more of us decide to say, no more. Not on my watch. Not in my America. So these are the things that in the coming weeks that I want to talk about. I'm going to discuss. I'm going to have guests on. A lot of them probably excuse me, more chance of them being friends of mine as opposed to, I guess, what the conventional media is going to consider experts. But like I told you in the previous recording, as far as Restoring Main Street goes, I'm coming from grassroots perspective. I'm coming from the idea that I don't have all the answers, but I certainly know what my principles are. I certainly know what this country stands for. I know what I was taught growing up. And personal responsibility was one of them. If you choose to speak, be prepared to basically stand up for what you said. And the reason we have a protection in the First Amendment for speech is not to protect acceptable speech. It's to protect the speech that offends. You don't need to protect speech that everybody agrees with. But everybody has a right to have a voice. So again, these are the things that I'm going to discuss. We're going to get into all kinds of different subjects that I think are a detriment when I say restoring Main Street and the vibrance that I see, that I remember walking down my Main Street as a kid. And like I said, it's people. That's the important thing. Their integrity, their freedom of speech, their ability to freely move about and do what they need to do, make the decisions in their life that affect them, that affect the people around them, without government intervention in every single aspect of our life. So that's where I'm coming from. And yeah. Well, let's switch this over to the webcam so it gets a little more personal. I know I went a little bit long there. This was basically unscripted, and I'm sure you pretty much can tell. But I wanted to start somewhere. It'd been a while since I posted anything, and I know I had talked about and promised any of you that follow Restoring Main Street content would be coming out soon. To just change gears a little bit here, just to give you, like I said, a quick background on still what's going on. I'm still working on, with individuals to bring them on to have a two-way discussion here about some of these subjects. I've spent some time in procuring some software to actually produce a flashy little intro and outro so that this whole thing looks a little more polished as well. But like I said, my biggest concern is more content and trying to share this with you, giving you something that's some meat and things to think about. It doesn't concern me what your political position is. Left, right, independent. More of my concern is based in we used to be able to discuss things. We used to have middle ground that we could all agree on. And those things were the principles that we were all brought up and taught. Those things don't go away. Those are pillars of society. I don't care what the progressives are trying to tell you society is supposed to be. I don't care what they're trying to rewrite at this point. And trust me, they are trying to rewrite things. They are using the excuse of this pandemic to attempt to change a lot of different things. And some of those different subjects are some of the things that I'm going to cover in the upcoming weeks. So all I ask from you is to keep an open mind, to tune in. We are going to provide, like I said, the subject matter of things that are at the forefront of our society right now, the things, like I said, that I feel are causing strife, that are basically causing divisions in this country. And we're going to do our best to try to discuss these subjects in a way that hopefully prevents, or not prevents, but presents some ideas and some ways to move forward, to get back to the way we used to think about and discuss things. Like I said, certain basic principles are things that never grow old. They are just stalwart. They're the things that we use to go about our lives day to day. And they're the things that we used to have in common. Basically, our e plurimus unum. And like I said, those are important things. So all I really want to do is cause you to pause, if nothing else, and to think. So with that, I'll give you back your evening. And I will be scheduling something else here very soon. Like I said, I've got a lot of things in the works. I'm trying to push my learning curve as far as OBS and some of the audios and integrating a soundboard and some better audio equipment and those type of things. So if there's anybody out there that is feeling generous and has a good background with those things, I am open to help and suggestions. So please contact. But also, as a reminder, seriously, as far as Restoring Main Street goes, I'd like to remind you all that we do have a website now, so you can go to restoringmainstreet.com. You will find this video podcast there. I've actually found a way to actually load it to the website. I will load this to Facebook. I will load this to Rumble. BitChute, I think, is another one that I'm going to try to load this to. Any place that I can load this video where, if you want access, YouTube. I have a YouTube channel, a Restoring Main Street YouTube channel as well. I also have a Restoring Main Street Gab page and a Restoring Main Street MeWe page. I will put links to this podcast in both of those places as well. So wherever you get your social media, wherever you go to search out content and information, you will find Restoring Main Street. And I would really appreciate it, and so would the contributors on the Restoring Main Street page. If you would go to our webpage and subscribe, add your email address, visit frequently. Like I said, right now this is a volunteer staff that's writing, so the articles aren't coming extremely quickly, but I promise you, the intent from the people that are writing is honest. All of them are local, and all of them are like me, basically just an average person. None of us are professionals at this, and I know in some cases, in my case, it's painfully obvious sometimes. But again, I pray that you can look past some of that and focus on the content and what we're about and what we're trying to do. So, as I always do, I'd like to leave you with this. It's basically God, freedom, and family. Because if we lose the first two, basically our families are doomed. So until next time, this is Gary signing off from Restoring Main Street here on the beach, here in the Granite State. And God bless you, and I'll be back soon.